Hello, lovely, and welcome to your reading. We are going to go ahead and get right into it. I may divide this reading up into two parts just so that it takes a little less to upload, but we'll see. So I'm hoping to get through quite a bit. There was quite a bit I saw that's very significant, and I want to hopefully cover as much as I can. So let's get started. This first chart that you see here, this is a copy of essentially your natal chart and what the stars looked like at the time of your birth. Now, I wanted to start first on your ascendant because there's quite a few significant things happening here. Your ascendant, also known as the rising sign, is Pisces. It's considered the ascendant, called the ascendant, because this is where the horizon was on the day that you were born. So it was in Pisces. Your rising sign is right here. You can see here with the AS, that stands for your ascendant, right at 26 degrees of Pisces. Now, with this, the ascendant really it describes the vehicle that we maneuver through in the world. Okay, this is how we are perceived. It's our body. It really just tells us how we navigate through life. Now, the ascendant in Pisces pretty much says that you have the ability to act as a mirror to others. You can even take on the persona of the people that you admire. So there's this kind of, almost like blending that can happen where you may not know where you begin and other people begin and where you stop and where they stop, kind of like this lack of boundaries, right? So it's this watery, it's water, right? So that's something that can really happen with an ascendant rise, with a Pisces rising. Others are going to see you as pretty selfless, even self-sacrificing, and very, very compassionate. So with this Pisces ascendant, I always think of people, they're so compassionate and they tend to absorb just pretty much everything. Like, you may not even know this is something you may have already worked through, but maybe early on you didn't know when you took on the energy of other people, just because you kind of absorb everything. Pisces just kind of feels everything, not only for themselves but what other people are feeling, right? Now, something that's pretty significant here, as you can see, the 26 degrees here of Pisces rising is forming a trine to your natal Saturn over here in Cancer. So this can indicate usually maturity that was achieved at a very early age. It could be that you were given more responsibility growing up than most other children your age. It could also indicate that some sacrifices and restrictions occurred early on in your childhood that made you mature earlier than most. Okay, so it's definitely just a factor there that is quite significant there. Although this is a soft aspect, soft aspects are usually considered not as challenging as the hard aspects, and this is a soft aspect. So it's not as challenging. Saturn can make really any planet it touches or angle in the chart, it can make it a little hesitant and even fearful. And it can also make it so that there's kind of fear around how you express yourself, especially because the fact that he's in the fifth house of kind of your creativity and how your own self-expression. So there can be some kind of hesitation there, just kind of some shyness. You're not one to kind of throw yourself out there on stage and be like, hey, look at me. There is this kind of standoffish approach, which Saturn brings into the mix, right, with how you present yourself to the world. So that's kind of a significant factor there because it's only separated by 1 degree. So what I wanted to go on to next, I will be using traditional rulerships because I do use, I'm more of a traditional astrologer. I definitely use the outer planets, which we will talk about. But I'm going to be using traditional rulerships here. So the traditional ruler of your ascendant is actually Jupiter. And Jupiter is here in the third house of Taurus, right? And I'm also using whole sign systems, so that's why they're all like perfectly in each of their houses. So Jupiter in Taurus, over here in your third house, is very grounded. It's a very earthy Taurus and very much in the present moment. Jupiter in Taurus is super loyal. Being in nature is highly inspiring and beneficial for you, and may even be spiritually fulfilling with that placement there. The old cliche of nature being somebody's church comes to mind. That's really kind of where you may connect to almost like inspiration from a divine source you can find in nature for you, kind of where you find your tranquility, your spirituality, very strong in that sign. There's a strong spiritual connection to the earth often with this placement, and even all of her inhabitants, right? So that will be the animals and the plants and the nature spirits. All of that is going to be something that may be really highly of interest to you, that you've always resonated with. You may have a great interest in plants, herbalism, and their medicinal properties. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and in Taurus is going to require a strong sense of stability and security in order to continuously be able to explore and fulfill its desire for adventure and new experiences. Because Taurus is a fixed sign, it's an earth sign, there is going to be that need for kind of practical means and that earthly stability in order to do Jupiter things. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, of growth, of new life experiences. It's always wanting an adventure, right? It's all about growth. So, in order to be able to do that, you have to be deeply rooted in one way or another in order to achieve your Jupiter experiences. So I did want to point something out that's really interesting with your Jupiter. Because Jupiter is in Taurus, if the traditional Jupiter in Taurus, if I were to see that, would essentially crave more routine, and it'd be a little more rigid and very hesitant for change. However, in your case, it's a little different, and the reason why is because Jupiter is conjunct. This little symbol here is called the South Node. Excuse my nails; they're all peeling. I hate that. It's one of my pet peeves. All right, so Jupiter, again, usually, because if it's in Taurus, it kind of values continuity over the constant change. But yours is going to be different, again, because it's conjunct the south lunar node. That's what this little symbol is. So because you have Jupiter conjunct your south node, once things become too routine and familiar to you, you may be pulled to create some change. I do want to talk a little bit about what they mean, the south and north lunar nodes. As you can see here, these are measurements in the sky. And essentially the south node, as you can look at it, almost looks like, I kind of always call it like our little baggage. So it's essentially what we come into this lifetime with. It can be things that tend to be familiar because we've already experienced them. And with experience, we usually cultivate gifts, right? So these can signify gifts that you already come in with. This is something you've done before. However, you want to, yes, definitely use your gifts that you've used before, but you don't want to stay here because you've already been there, done that, and it's going to deplete you. You're not going to grow, right? So you actually want to ascend and go towards the north lunar node. These are also known as the head and the tail of the dragon. So this being the tail of the dragon, this being the head of the dragon, which is up here. So they're always opposite each other. So that is really significant because even though you do come in with all these gifts, gifts. Even the ones that we've talked about, these Jupiter ones, these more earthly type of tendencies that you have, this, the routine and, this, the constant kind of, Taurus can sometimes get a little monotonous, and it gets very stuck and rigid. That is not going to bode well for you. Even though you have all of these Taurus placements, you're going to want to move away from that. So I did want to say, because the South Node is in the third house here, the third house, let me tell you a little bit about that. This house represents siblings, your school, so how you learn, short trips, so places that are familiar to you. It's also the house of the goddess. It's the house of your neighborhood and pretty much communication. These topics may be something that you gravitate towards with ease and become stagnant and depleting. So again, gifts with these topics that I just went over, but also you can't be too stuck in there. The South Node, as I said, can bring that in the gifts, but also we want to kind of try to move towards the North Node. So your North Node is in that 9th house up here, and that is in Scorpio. And the 9th house is of travel, study, religion, international affairs, and interests, really, like exotic interests, faith, philosophy, the divine, and in traditional astrology, it was considered the house of God. So with that being said, there's going to be this kind of dynamic that plays out where you're going to be pulled in life to experience more of the North Node topics, right? So really exploring new places. I don't know if you like to travel, if you like seeing new places, exploring new philosophies, new spirituality, even different religions. Like that sort of topic is going to be something, or those topics are going to be things that are going to really fuel you and help you to grow. And especially with the help of Jupiter, who's in close relationship to that south and north lunar node. So I think you once told me that you kind of described yourself as a gypsy, and I think that fits it perfectly. And you're essentially staying true to what you are here to experience in this lifetime. You're really not meant to stay like in one place and just do the same old, same old. You're really meant to continuously explore new things and life experiences. So that is actually perfectly fitting for you. And so I love that you once said that you were kind of this gypsy. Now I want to get back real quick to your ascendant, because you have a significant fixed star conjunct your rising sign here, your ascendant, and it's known as Shiat. So Shiat is at 28 degrees of Pisces in the constellation Pegasus. Now you don't actually see it here on the chart because fixed stars aren't actually a lot like in the like in the zodiac here, so it's kind of floating out, but it is at that degree, so it has an impact, especially on an angle. So Shiat has the nature of Mercury and Mars. All the fixed stars have kind of natures of the planets that describe what they're like. So Mercury and Mars is how Shiat is very much like. It is believed to bestow knowledge, learning, science, ideas, and a strong mental fortitude and intellect, which is great. Some challenges the star may bring up are kind of a feeling of drowning in problems and that you can't keep your head above water. So, all the planets and all the stars have their gifts and also their challenges, right? And when the stars, though, are a little different than planets because they're considered to be more divine in essence. So really what they gift is even greater than, let's say, just tendencies you come in with due to how your planets are placed. So they're more significant, right? And they tend to impact our lives in a greater way. The fixed stars do, which is why I'm really going to stay here at this fixed star for a bit. So again, it's in Pisces, and this star is really kind of all about an excess of water. Now, because it's on your ascendant, which, as I said before, can be even your body. It can indicate that you may even easily retain water in your body. I don't know if that's something that happens to you, but there tends to be this like excess of water in your life in one way or another. You can also be extra sensitive to alcohol and drugs just because it's this watery, ovary consuming nature of Pisces. And your emotions may also tend to get the better of you, where you feel like you are kind of drowning in your emotions and you can't get out. So this could be something that you've experienced at one time. It could be kind of a repeated thing, or just something that kind of happens every now and again. So it's good to just kind of think back at like, how do you feel that water manifests in excess in your life? Now, to the ancients, this excess of water could manifest in actual flooding, shipwrecks, and they used to say drowning. By no means does this mean you're going to drown. The ancients used to have kind of a very, whenever they saw a challenge, anything like that, it was like so gloom and doom, because that was just the culture back then, and they were on ships all the time, and so it's a very different culture. So don't get freaked out by that. So I did think, though, however, I believe you said that your house did flood, and that is interesting because that would be a manifestation of Shiat. It is a flooding and excess of water. So that I thought was an interesting correlation. So for Shiat, an indulgence in alcohol doesn't tend to work out well. So limits are definitely encouraged, and that's even if you like to drink. I don't know if you like to drink. Just because what we want to do is really kind of bring out the gifts of the fixed star and learn how to work through the challenges. Just that's usually how I like to work with them. With this, you also want to establish strong boundaries that can be very beneficial for you, so you don't end up feeling overwhelmed and like you're drowning in responsibilities by taking on too much. Also, boundaries so that self-care is put more as a priority. Because the star is on your ascendant, which, as I said, can represent your body, it can also often bring chronic illness that needs to be constantly managed. Now, this could even be like getting sick often because you've been working too hard, so you get like a cold and then you get something else. And it's just because it's kind of a way that you're forced to take better care of yourself. So it can kind of manifest in that way. Overall, though, you just really want to pay close attention to how this excess water is manifesting in your life so that you learn to manage it. Now, one very cool thing, though, about this fixed star is that it brings many gifts that can be cultivated when we work with Mercury, because as I said before, this fixed star does have the nature of Mercury and Mars, and how we can, Mars can sometimes be a bit destructive, so we can leave him alone, but work with Mercury. Mercury is going to be a very important planet for you, especially, and I'm going to tell you why. Because this star, Shiat, tends to offer a great flow of mental creativity. People who had this star pretty prominent in their chart were Einstein, Newton, who else was it? I think it was Kepler, Johannes Kepler. So it was really highly emphasized in their chart, which kind of really emphasizes that mental aptitude that's attainable with Shiat. So I think that's really, really cool. So let's look at your natal Mercury, which is right over here in Gemini in the 4th house. So I do want to go over a couple of things here. So Mercury, there's just Mercury is just, let's just put it this way. Mercury is kind of, you're like a guardian angel for you, because it's not only in its sign of its rulership, it's also in its own terms. I mean, it's probably the strongest planet in your chart. So this is really very, very cool. Um, I did kind of talk a little bit about guardian angel. I don't want to get too far into that. Maybe at the end if I still have time, but we can talk about it even after the reading. I do want to get into a little bit about it, like, you know, how it is. The guardian angel to the ancients was considered also, like, it's called a daemon. So someone that was here to kind of help you attain your life's mission. I'll send you some information about it. Mercury and his spirits, his archangels, and that his archangel and that sort of thing. So let's get into Mercury in Gemini is very curious and nimble, intellectually and rhetorically versatile, humorous, smart, articulate, and super brilliant. There's a tendency to get easily distracted, however, with so many ideas always flowing in, you know, because there is this constant curiosity that Gemini has. So you may also feel like a student for life as you're always craving new information. That's the thing with Gemini, is that there's always this hunger for knowledge. Like you want to learn everything. And so you just kind of accumulate information constantly. You may feel, you may enjoy sharing your ideas with others. So definitely communication is emphasized. So strengths in all forms of communication, including writing, reading, teaching, learning, and again, the exchange of ideas with others. So I'm going to make this the part one of your reading, and then I am going to start part two just because we're already at 21 minutes. So I'll see you in a bit.